Hello and welcome wherever you're joining from. I'm Will Tolsher, the Global Bar Editor of the Legal 500, and in this webinar I'm going to talk through how to participate in the Legal 500's bar research with a focus on the upcoming 2024 edition of the Legal 500 UK. This presentation is aimed at not just explaining the basic process, but covering advice on how to make the most out of your submission documents and referee spreadsheet to show your practice in the best light for our researchers. Our research process is designed to make it as easy as possible to get involved. While many sets have specialist business development professionals, and we hope that this presentation is a useful resource for them, our research process is perfectly navigable for clerks and barristers on their own, including sole practitioners. Likewise, we hope this is of use to individual barristers in chambers which are already involved, to understand the way our research works better, if this is your first time submitting or you would like a refresher. This video will be focused on the upcoming edition of the UK Guide, which covers England and Wales, both in London and on circuit, and Scotland. We will be providing a new webinar around the time the guidelines are launched for the bar sections in our international guides, but most of the key principles apply in Australia and Hong Kong, as well as the sections regarding the English bar's work abroad. This webinar does not aim to cover submissions for law firms, which are covered separately. Barristers employed by law firms are welcome to be featured in the law firm coverage, while employed barristers in-house can be part of our in-house coverage, such as GC Power Lists. In this presentation, I'll be using the English and Welsh terminology for brevity's sake. As mentioned in our submission guidelines, please read references on this and our other documents to the appropriate terminology in Scotland. Our editorial endeavours to reflect each jurisdiction's system and terminology. If we need to explain it in a legal market overview for those using barristers or advocates in that jurisdiction for the first time, we will. The visual on this slide has some information about our international bar coverage. If your members are active in the Asian, offshore or Middle Eastern markets, and you haven't already done so, I'd very much encourage you to consider submitting for those. Indeed, you are more than welcome to submit dual and door tenants for bars abroad directly, but they'll be listed under their primary chambers in that jurisdiction, should they be ranked. The research process is an annual cycle, with the different guides being researched at different times of the year, and the UK further split up, with London being researched after the regions and Scotland. Our bar research runs more or less in parallel with the coverage of instructing solicitors in that geography, so we can provide a 360-degree up-to-date view of the market. Please also bear in mind that in the UK, the submission deadlines for the bar are often slightly different to the deadlines for corresponding solicitors' firms. Our submission deadlines are not staggered by practice area. The deadlines for the regions and Scotland are the 17th of February, and for London it is the 14th of April. I'll be talking about the submission guidelines a lot through this presentation. They can be navigated to at legal500.com as indicated on the right, at the URL displayed at the bottom, or alternatively scan the QR code on the left. Practice areas are how we taxonomise expertise in each jurisdiction. We have 68 practice areas in London, 7 more expansive practice areas in Scotland, and 27 you can submit for outside London. The areas on circuit in England and Wales should cover virtually every specialism that can be submitted for in London. Please bear in mind that the list in the guidelines is authoritative, not what you can see on the website published, and you can submit for any of the listed practice areas in any circuit. Every regional practice area is researched on every circuit. Don't be afraid to speak up if you're the only specialist in your geography in a particular area. If you submit, you will be considered. We simply don't display empty pages. Please bear in mind the definitions document, which is uploaded with the guidelines. These, even if not completely exhaustive, will hopefully provide a very useful steer. If something appears to fall between the gaps of the practice areas, please do get in touch with us. A quick note on how we divide up work between London and the English and Welsh regions, and also on Scotland. The regional bar is researched first, then the London bar, so the processes are researched in parallel with the relevant solicitors. Many of the same research are used for both the London and regional coverage, but one researcher will cover all sections on a circuit in order to get under the skin of your local market. While most barristers submitting for circuits are based in the chambers located there, this isn't a strict requirement. The main concern that we have is that work has a close connection to that circuit, generally being heard on the region and involving instructing solicitors and parties based there. Information about advocacy in the Welsh language is particularly useful to those who are submitting for the Wales and Chester section from outside Wales. Scotland is of course a separate jurisdiction, so it sits outside our regional bar coverage. Like our other international sections, only Scottish advocates can participate in this research, and the practice area list is drawn up with Scotland specifically in mind. Scottish referees are contacted separately from the English and Welsh regional research. On the next slide, I will cover some changes that we have made to this year's research process and practice areas. We have two new practice areas for London Chambers to submit for in our bar coverage. The first of these is crypto and blockchain assets, and the second is family, private FDR judges and arbitrators. Further information about the contours of what we are looking for there is in the practice area documents. On circuit, we now have separate rankings on separate pages, including extra set editorials and more set quotes for the two strands of family law. Please send in a separate submission for each as per the guidelines. We also have made some minor refinements to the names of a few practice areas in London and on circuit, primarily for ease of navigation. In London, we have also amalgamated the travel and aviation sections to create a new travel and aviation section. The international personal injury work that would have been listed as travel law in the past should now be submitted as personal injury. We haven't made radical changes to the submission template this year, and as always we'll accept submissions using last year's template. We've made one key usability update and a few changes to some of the text prompts. The usability change is that if you wish to include a list of members in the submission, we now have a space for it. It's optional, but we're aware that some sets find it useful. We now also have changed some of the text prompts. Notably, we want to know about any clerks who have been on parental leave, so we can protect mentions of them in the guide, similar to how we protect members who have been on parental leave. The sections for individual barristers will now also ask if members of chambers have primary care responsibilities we ought to bear in mind. As always, there's an annual refresh of the referee spreadsheet. Well, that's to do with changes to the list of practice areas. There's no substantive change to the structure of the spreadsheet or how to fill it in from previous years. So what do our rankings mean? For each individual practice area, we have a ranking of chambers as well as several tables for individuals based on seniority. The table for leading silks is hopefully self-explanatory, and we also have separate tables for the most recent 2 rounds of silk appointments. Those who are ranked in that area previously as juniors generally stay there for those 2 years, but after that promotion to leading silks is not automatic. We have a leading juniors table, generally populated by mid-level and senior juniors and above, and we also have a rising stars section for those early on in their careers, typically 4 to 7 years call. For the 2024 guide, that means 2016 calls and before. Again, 2015 calls currently ranked in this section can be considered for, but will not be automatically included in the leading juniors table. Call in this context means first qualification in any jurisdiction. For instance, a 2010 call to the bar in Australia who was called in England in 2018 would be considered a 2010 call for our purposes. Likewise, the same would apply for those admitted as silks elsewhere. We're aware that Scotland's distinct system of legal education and training means there'll be fewer rising stars in that jurisdiction. Rising star sections are researched for all practice areas, even if none are currently ranked, so please put candidates forward for every area. Our sections for arbitrators and international sections in some cases do have a slightly different structure to represent the particular needs of that section. Notably, for arbitrators, we do not divide by silks and juniors, but we do divide between full-time and part-time arbitrators in the main. Our rankings are an evidence-based, annual, qualitative process, entirely independent of commercial profiles, with submissions at the core of the structure. To be clear, the profiles are the bolded links and the pages accessed through them. Those who do not send in submissions, either individuals or sets, are unlikely to have the evidence base for us to rank them, and we're unable to provide an editorial for them. This is to ensure that our coverage is accurate and up to date. The primary factor for individuals is work as evidenced through the submission and referee feedback. We would not suggest that one is prioritised over the other, but depending on the practice area, we put different amounts of weight on referee feedback. Peer feedback is gathered through the interview process as a secondary factor in our guide, unlike a number of other publications, and is only really given a significant weight when it is something we can independently verify and corroborate. Set rankings look at bench strength across all levels, so it's important for those in all stages of their careers to participate, even if on one end you're a well-known name in the market, or on the other extreme very junior. In most practice areas in London, it's a rough rule of thumb that a set, in order to gain a ranking in that practice area, should have a silk ranked, but it is by no means a formal requirement. We are aware that for many areas there is a limited amount of silk work, so we consider ranking sets without silks if they demonstrate strong senior juniors. Examples of these areas include social housing and immigration. Even more flexibility is applied on circuit, where silks are very much the icing on the cake. By strength across all levels, we do mean that, including junior levels. For instance, a set with a slightly stronger group of silks but a clearly weaker group of juniors would be likely to be ranked below a set with fewer ranked silks but much more talent coming through. The submission documents come in two parts. The first is a written Word document in which you can let us know about Chambers as a whole and what the members have been up to over the past year. The second is an Excel spreadsheet to nominate referees. These are sent through a platform at www.submissions.legal500.com. If you don't have a login for this, you can request one through www.legal500.com/FAQs. Our systems will have one designated point of contact for Chambers. If that does change, do let us know. This is important so we can send our communications to the right people. For data security reasons, we can't accept submissions through email or any other method than www.submissions.legal500.com. If you do try to email them to individual researchers or to any other mailbox, they will be expunged from our systems for data security reasons. This applies to attaching submissions to post-publication queries as well. Chambers who have commercial profiles with us will have access to Convert Now, which will do the bulk of the effort in converting a submission from the Chambers and Partners submission template into ours. That said, its function is predicated on the C&P template being unmodified, and please also bear in mind that our definitions of practice areas and what we are looking for in the research are distinct from other publications. The first of the two parts in the process I will discuss in this presentation is the referee spreadsheet. In order to carry out the largest process gathering feedback on barristers in the world, we do so automatically through a semi-automatic email system. Therefore, we use a set standard form spreadsheet to provide details. Please don't alter the structure of this document in any way. It won't let you fill out the contact details until the top row has been filled out. The fields are self-explanatory: title, job title, organisation, email address, and critically, which barrister the referee is a referee for. We also ask if they're an instructing solicitor or another type of referee, as we ask them different questions. Please ensure the information is correct, because any errors in this data will be brought through to what your referees are contacted with. We use a system of deduplication to ensure that each referee receives one email, no matter how many barristers nominated them. If an individual is a referee for multiple members of Chambers, please put them on separate lines. Therefore, the deadline is a hard deadline, for which we have no flexibility to extend, except in the most exceptional circumstances, and only then by a small amount of time. If time is running at a premium close to the submission deadline, we encourage you to prioritise the referee spreadsheet. It is still important for us to receive the Word part of the submission on time, but there is a degree of flexibility on that which does not exist for the referees for that practical reason. When it comes to deciding who can be a referee, we are flexible on who you can nominate. Anyone who is capable of providing an opinion on your practice and critically is a willing volunteer. When it comes to nominating instructing solicitors as referees, we don't place much or any stock on how senior they are. We would suggest listing the person you have worked with the most, even over a partner who supervised them, as they will be able to provide the most insight into your work. You may nominate opposing counsel, including members of your own chambers, but referees from your own chambers may have a slightly lower rate to put on. We also consider arbitrators, expert witnesses and similar, as well as the right sort of lay clients. We're aware it's not appropriate in every case. We're also aware that the CPS, Government Legal Department, and a number of other public bodies in the UK and elsewhere don't provide referee feedback. There's no need to list these individuals, indeed please don't. However, please mention that in your submission. That way researchers will explicitly factor that in when making ranking decisions. Our documents do mention 15 referees, and that's a good number, but that's, to be clear, a suggestion and not a minimum. Please don't be deterred from submitting if you're unable to muster that number. Individual referees don't need to specifically refer to individual cases in your submission. We can contact referees located anywhere in the world, and there's absolutely no limit on how many you can nominate at all. Our referees are contacted via email and not via telephone. As a specific note to the criminal bar, we can't accept CJSM addresses. We can only contact conventional email addresses, and our messages will contain links to our secure system. In our experience, about 20 to 30% of referees respond. That sounds low, but is a high degree of success for a mass mail-out campaign of its size. It can be helpful to warn referees that they are about to be contacted, and we do inform chambers so you can do so. The email will come from editorial@legal500.com and will contain a survey link for each individual barrister. The referee survey will hopefully take no more than 10 minutes to do per barrister. The second and equally important part of the submission is a written Word document. This is a cornerstone of the research process, and it's your opportunity to set out in your own words why your chambers is special. Indeed, in some cases, you'll be placing a focus on the submission rather than the referee process. To provide a level playing field and to set out the information we're looking for, we use a template with preset questions. Please don't modify the templates in any way, other than copying and pasting the boxes for barrister biographies and work highlights. In addition to self-explanatory fields about contact details and similar, and an optional list of members in the submission, we have 3 main boxes for you to put in your narrative about chambers as a whole. The first allows you to set your chambers apart from others. The second is for you to tell us about the clerking and practice management team. One change is that we now explicitly want to know if there have been any members of the clerking or practice management team who have been on parental leave, so we can protect mentions of them similarly to how we protect mentions of members of chambers. The third is for you to provide confidential feedback on our existing rankings. This year we have slightly updated a few of the prompts here. Across the entire submission process, if you mark information in red font, we will treat it as confidential. After the boxes about chambers as a whole, sections for individual barristers follow. We ask each barrister to provide information about themselves using one of the biographical information boxes and then 5 work highlights. Most of the fields are self-explanatory, but in the largest box you can set out relevant experience, including practice elsewhere or as a solicitor. You can also use it to let us know about sick leave, parental leave, caring responsibilities or sabbaticals we should be aware of. You can also use it to tell us if you've been doing a lot of work for the GLD, CPS or other bodies that don't provide referee feedback, so we can bear that in mind. The case history box is also your opportunity to inform us of particularly notable work prior to the research period that you feel we should be aware of. Next follow the 5 work highlights. Please don't overload the submission by adding more. The matters are the way for you to show us what you and your members have been doing over the time frame. Use the work highlights to identify the complexity and challenge of the work, both legal and practical. It is helpful to be clear as to what your exact role is. If you're a junior on a specific work stream in a case, for instance, please make that clear. If it is not obvious at first blush why a work highlight is relevant, please set out why. A case can be in multiple submissions, but you may wish to tailor the editorial commentary in each to ensure that it's clear why each highlight is relevant to that particular practice area. The date field is important and the relevant timeframe is the 2022 calendar year. Any past COVID-related extensions and flexibility has concluded given the return of jury trials. That said, please do let us know if your submission has been affected by the Criminal Bar Association's industrial action, and again we will bear that in mind. If your work spans multiple years, please make it clear what has been going on in that time frame. Again, please include any information you wish to remain confidential in red font. This can be the whole case if need be. Confidential work is not valued less than publishable work in making our ranking decisions. If your client needs to remain anonymous, again, we will consider the case on the merits of what we know. Information about who you are led by is particularly helpful for juniors doing lead work, and the same applies to SILPs as to who they are leading as well. The other information box is helpful. Links to Bailey and its international equivalents are very helpful to ensure that everyone is on the same page as to what case we're referring to. We do support pro bono, and if one of your most interesting 5 cases over the past year has been something you have done pro bono, please feel free to include that. Just as a few pointers as to what to do in certain circumstances. If time's running at a premium, please focus on the referee spreadsheets, not the written documents. We can't extend any flexibility on the referee spreadsheets, but we will try and take a look at late submissions if we can, although there is no guarantee. If your practice means that you can't muster 5 work highlights, let us know why. For instance, if you've been involved in one very long trial, just make it clear how long that trial's been going on for and we'll bear that in mind. This could be if it's something relevant to another practice area as well. Likewise, if you move chambers, please let us know and we'll suggest how to proceed. Individual rankings recognise individuals and do move with individuals between chambers if need be. That said, if you have come to the bar from a law firm or vice versa, we will consider you and bear that expertise in mind, but we don't move rankings automatically. For those coming to the bar from a firm of solicitors, we do expect to see a range of work, including instructions that don't come from your previous firm, before considering you for a ranking. The third leg of the process is interviews. These are not a key determinant of the rankings, but they are important to ensure we are connected to the market. Depending on geographies and other circumstances, our interviews have featured a mix of in-person and video conference interviews. We could never undertake to interview everyone in the market, but if you are particularly keen on speaking to a researcher, please request as such, but don't be offended if they're unable to. To stress, interviews are primarily to calibrate what work we're looking for and to ensure that we're approaching the practice area correctly, but an interview is unlikely to be something that places us set in one tier rather than another. In the UK, we generally focus on interviewing clerks who are able to speak for the entirety of chambers, but we will often ask to speak to members as well. If we are able to interview your members, which members we speak to are up to you based on making diaries work. We don't request any specific preparations for interviews beyond familiarity with the content of the submission. And of course, discussion of confidential matters remains confidential. We appreciate the effort that goes into doing the submissions which underpin our research. To get more value for sets out of that process, the Legal 500 Bar Awards recognises the best of the bar. Returning for its 2nd year, it's a standalone awards night, with 90 categories recognising barristers, clerks and other professionals in chambers of all levels of seniority, from pupils to senior clerks. No extra submissions are needed. It is all based on the same research as the main rankings. There's no need to send in any extra information. Please bear in mind that for the practice area awards, some are individual ranking practice areas and some are groups of them. The Legal 500 Bar Awards are on the 3rd of October 2023, and please speak to Alexander Rowan about table bookings if you have not already discussed them. After the research is concluded, the research team and I will take some time to consider our ranking decisions and edit the guide. We don't announce a release date until we're closer to the launch date, but we do aim to give sets fair warning. Please direct any queries about new editions of the guide to legal500.com/FAQs and not individual editors or members of the research team. This allows us to triage queries to the right person, be it a technical issue, something to do with profiles, or an editorial question. Please bear in mind that editorial and sales are independent and you will be pointed to the right team for your query. We receive large numbers of queries after the launch of a guide, so we're grateful in advance for your patience with us getting back. We do endeavour to respond to requests for feedback on individual rankings, but that can take some degree of time. The Legal 500 is a year-round process. We endeavour to make changes based on judicial appointments, chambers moves and silk elevations, so please do keep in touch. Thank you very much for watching. We hope that this presentation was useful and has helped resolve any questions you have about how the submission process works and what we're looking for in our ranking decisions. If there's one message I'd like you to leave with, it's that our process is interactive and evidence-based. Please don't hesitate to get involved and keep in touch with us throughout the process, and we'll endeavour to assist. Please do get in touch with me and the team if you still have any questions. Even though we run on an annual research cycle, from guidelines through to launch, we cherish opportunities for interaction with the bar all year round. Goodbye.